Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers. And I thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday evening. And before I continue, I just want to ask you to please like and subscribe to Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day and night, including the show and the Hangover and the Touchdown Under. You saw that earlier Friday night. And you can also catch all those shows, all the live shows, live on Facebook. So please check Facebook out if you're not on YouTube. If you're on Behind the Steel Curtain's Facebook page, you'll find all of our live shows as they're happening. Sorry, I apologize. I was having some technical difficulties. And when you're done checking out our live shows on the audio side after the fact, you can also check out our original audio shows, our audio-only shows on any audio platform, any place where you can find podcasts, you can find Behind the Steel Curtains content. It's become a great channel, become a great source of Steelers information, Steelers analysis, Steelers opinions, Steelers commentary, Steelers breakdowns. You won't be sorry. And everybody's just ready to go right now. I mean, we're less than 48 hours away from the start of the Steelers 2022 regular season. So we're going to be having lots of wonderful content for you in the 2022 regular season. And you won't be, you'll be sorry if you don't check it out. Check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime there's breaking news, anytime there's a trade, anytime anybody does anything Steelers related, we're one of the first people to bring it to you. So check that side of it out too. We're going to have a lot of great content for you during the season, just like we always do. And let's check out the live chat, who we have in the live chat on this Friday night. Steelers-Pittsburgh is the first one. And isn't that appropriate since we're just about to start the Steelers 2022 regular season? Kathy Ford is with us, and she says, hello, Tony, Steelers-Pittsburgh, and the rest of the fans. There you go. Jared Devil's with us. Devin Logan says, what's up, Tony? All right, we have a nice crew. Javier More is with us. He says, hey, guys. All right, let's talk about the Steelers and the Bengals this Sunday. As I said, we're almost there. We've waited through 8 months of Steeler talk, not related to the Steelers playing any games. Draft talk, free agent talk, OTA talk, all kinds of talk. And now we're ready to watch them play an actual regular season game this Sunday at Paycor Stadium, the newly named Paycor Stadium, against the defending AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, a rival that they used to take for granted, a division rival they used to take for granted. There's no question about it. But now the Bengals are the reigning AFC champions, and boy, have the tables turned, haven't they? And what a way for the Steelers to start their season, the first one in 18 years without Ben Roethlisberger as the face of the franchise, as their franchise quarterback. He retired in January, so they had to go out and find his replacement, and they did ultimately, at least for the 2022 season, at least for the start of the 2022 season. That's Mitch Trubisky. He's trying to redeem himself. They're trying to find a adequate, at least an adequate offensive line. They made a couple more additions in the offseason. They made some additions on defense. This is Mike Tomlin's first year without Ben leading the way for him on this 53-man roster. What have people said about Tomlin all these years since he took over in 2007? Boy, I'd like to see what they do. I like to see what Tomlin does, what kind of coach he is without Ben Roethlisberger. Well, here he is. He's going to get his first crack at that. He has a new defensive coordinator in Terrell Austin. He brought Brian Flores in the mix, into the fold, to be sort of a defensive consultant / linebackers coach / just great football coach. So they have all these questions that need to be answered for 2022. What kind of team are they going to be? Is their defense going to be dominant? Is their offense going to figure things out under Matt Canada? And who do they get to do it against? The Cincinnati Bengals, the AFC Champions. So it's going to be quite a test for them. There's no question about it. They're 6.5-point underdogs. They've lost 3 in a row to Cincinnati, and none of the games were close. If you go back to December of 2020, they've lost 3 games by a combined score of 92, if I remember my math right, to 37. That's some pretty open and obvious dominance by the guys down in the jungle in Cincinnati. So how are they going to fare this week? How are they going to look against this team? Are they going to come prepared to play? Is Cincinnati going to roll over them again? What do they have to do to win this game? Well, first of all, I think they have to hope that their defense is the elite unit that many people think it can be. And of course, that starts with TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, that front seven. They have to get pressure on Joe Burrow, the new king of the AFC North quarterbacks. I think it's fair to say. So they have to get pressure on him. The Bengals have a revamped offensive line. They added, 4 or 5 players, and I think they have 3 or 4 new starters. Alex Carrot, a center, Leal Collins, right tackle. So they have a whole new offensive line. They practically anyway. So perhaps this stout front seven, if you with Tyson Alualu back in the mix and Larry Ogunjobi, the new addition that they brought in, who played for the Bengals last year, perhaps they can set the tone early in this game by dominating that new offensive line for the Bengals, and the Bengals that's one area that they struggled in last year, just like the Steelers, is the offensive line was I think Burrow was sacked 51 times. So that's one way they can set the tone. You know, they have a Miles Jack back there, another addition in free agency. He had a great camp by all accounts, and he looks like somebody who could be a difference maker for them at inside linebacker, regardless of who's playing next to him, whether it's Devin Bush or Robert Spillane or whomever. So that's one way that they can set a tone is by dominating that line and getting after Joe Burrow and making life miserable for him, which is something they couldn't do last year. But in all fairness, last year they had injury problems when they faced the Bengals, especially early on. TJ Watt, I'm sorry, was it TJ Watt? Yeah, TJ Watt missed that game, I think, or at least he wasn't 100% anyway. And that was the first game that they were without Alualu, who left, who was injured in week 2 against the Raiders, and then missed the rest of the year. So that week 3 matchup was the first without Alualu, and they never had Stephon Tuitt. So with a more formidable front seven this year, maybe they can get after Joe Burrow and catch this revamped Bengals offensive line while still trying to gel and figure out a way to work together, kind of like Pittsburgh's offensive line right now. That's one way. And of course you have to find a way to slow down Joe Mixon, who certainly in that second game, that 41-10 game last November, he terrorized them to the tune of 165 rushing yards. So that's another way to stay in this game and perhaps pull it out, is stopping Joe Mixon. As far as the offensive side of the ball, well, we're finally going to get a chance to see the entire Matt Canada playbook. It would seem anyway. We really didn't see much of it in the preseason. I would imagine these guys, they don't like to reveal a whole lot in the preseason. It's everything's pretty vanilla. So the Bengals, they're people talk about their skill position players and Joe Burrow, and there's no question they have They have an incredible arsenal of skill position players led by Jamar Chase and obviously Mixon and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. They added Hayden Hurst as a tight end. He's a pretty good tight end that they added in free agency. So they have a great offense, and if the offensive line is improved this year, they're going to have almost an unstoppable offense. I would imagine, but their defense is pretty darn good too. Their front seven is not bad. Trey Hendrickson, I believe that's his name. He had 14 sacks last year. Sam Hubbard had 7 on the other side. They're 2 defensive ends. Logan Wilson's a pretty darn good inside linebacker. Their secondary is fantastic, I think, led by the safeties, Von Bell and Jesse Bates. Obviously, they have Mike Hilton as their slot corner, former Steeler. Eli Apple's a pretty decent cornerback. So, they got a good defense. So, this offensive line that struggled all throughout training camp in the preseason, the Steelers' offensive line, they're going to have their hands full. Dan Moore's going to have his hands full against Hendrickson and Shooks, who was injured throughout the week, but he was a full participant on Friday during Friday's practice, so he's expected to play. Shooks Okorafor. He's going to have his hands full with Sam Hubbard. So the first way that the first thing that has to happen is this line has to try to contain the Bengals front seven and give Trubisky some time back there, or at least enough time for him to move around in the pocket and make some things happen. And of course, they have to hopefully open some holes for Najee Harris, because if you're going to slow down that Bengals offense, aside from getting after Joe Burrow, you're going to want to control the clock, control the ball, and that starts with establishing the run, which is something they really couldn't do last year, even though Harris rushed for 1,200 yards. He only averaged 3.6 yards per carry. I heard somebody, I think it was Jerry Dulac, cite a stat yesterday on Thursday, and the stat was Harris averaged 3.6 yards per carry, but 2.2 of those 3.6 yards came after contact. So he was getting hit early and often. So they're going to have to do a better job this year of creating some running lanes for Harris, and that's hopefully starts on Sunday in Cincinnati. So on offense, they're going to have to try to play a little bit of ball control offense. But I'm not necessarily saying that they have to be conservative the whole game. The Steelers have a pretty decent arsenal of skill position players in their own right, with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, who was hurt throughout the week, but he participated fully in practice on Friday, and he's expected to play on Sunday. Claypool, Johnson, rookie Pickens, George Pickens, of course, Pat Freiermuth. So they have a pretty good arsenal of skill position players in their own right. But you're going to have to give Trubisky some time back in the you have to find a way to do that, and whether that's through a lot of motion. It's been part of Canada's. That's part of Canada's playbook. We didn't get to see a lot of it last year because they were kind of using Ben's offense for the most part his last year here. So they're going to have to find a way to give Trubisky some time, whether it's through decent blocking or moving the pocket or misdirection, something. They're going to have to find a way to keep the Bengals defense honest. They can't just tee off and like they've been doing the last couple of years, like defenses have been doing the last couple of years against Pittsburgh. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for Pittsburgh, no matter what how you slice it, offensively or defensively. This game is going to be a challenge. I mean, you look at the Bengals receivers. I mentioned them already. Who's going to cover those guys? We like the Steelers corners. Levi Wallace, Akilla Witherspoon, Cam Sutton, I'm a big fan of, becoming more of a fan of each and every year. These are decent players, but do they have the ability to match the Bengals receivers? If they double somebody, if they double Jamar Chase, which I wouldn't blame them one bit because he's already one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he's only coming into his second year, and he burned them last year, especially early on in week 3. If they double him, well, somebody's gonna have to cover T. Higgins one-on-one. Somebody's gonna have to cover Boyd one-on-one. So that's gonna be a tall order. As far as the tight end, as we know, Terrell Edmonds is pretty good at neutralizing the opposing team's tight end. So hopefully he can utilize those skills on Sunday and take out the Bengals tight end. But it's not going to be easy. So that's why I said earlier when I opened up the show, the best way to disrupt or to neutralize the Bengals and stop their offense is to get after Burrow, and that's going to start with the front seven and getting after and terrorizing that new lineup there. So it's going to be a tall order. People are kind of counting on Pittsburgh sneaking up on the Bengals like they did Buffalo last year, but you might have been able to do that with the Bills. But the Bengals are a division rival, so you're not going to sneak up on them. They're ready for the Steelers. I would imagine. They're not going to want to start the year after losing a close Super Bowl. They're not going to want to start the next year by losing to their longtime tormentors at home amid this great celebration for being the defending AFC champions. They're not going to want to lose that game to their longtime big brother, the Steelers. So they're going to be ready. So they're not going to be able to sneak up on them. So that's I wouldn't count on that. And as far as the Super Bowl hangover, people keep saying that, the teams that lose the previous Super Bowl, they always have a kind of a bad year the following year. Although the Patriots just won in 2018 after losing in 2017, and just because that's a trend historically, it doesn't mean it's going to happen in 2022. You have to take each season as its own entity. And to me, it doesn't feel like the Bengals are primed for a Super Bowl hangover. To me, it feels like the Bengals are just getting started as an organization. They were 10-7 last year, which is, for them, it was good enough to win the AFC North. But it felt like they came on at the end of the year, like they were gaining momentum as the year progressed. There was a point earlier in the year where they got their doors blown off by the Browns at Cincinnati. So and the Browns didn't even make the playoffs last year. So I think they really hit their stride down the stretch and into the playoffs. And we know what they did in the playoffs. They beat the Raiders. They beat the Titans on the road. And of course, they went into Cincinnati into Kansas City and knocked off the 2-time defending AFC champions in overtime. So, it feels like they're just hitting their stride. So I wouldn't count on the Super Bowl hangover either. The one thing that I've been hearing all week from Bengals reporters and who made appearances on local Pittsburgh radio shows to talk about this game. The one thing I've been hearing all week is that the Bengals really weren't going full bore at training camp. Like a lot of the guys on a lot of their starters didn't even play in the preseason, including the offensive line, this new offensive line. And while the Steelers certainly rested their share of players in the preseason, it wasn't like it in the past. I mean, a lot of their guys played more than they normally would have in the past. And you keep hearing about these physical practices the Steelers had all throughout training camp, including this week in preparation for the Bengals game. So maybe that's one area where Pittsburgh can kind of take advantage, is maybe being more ready than the Bengals are out of the gate, having higher intensity because of the training camp that they had, the preseason that they had, and the practice that they had leading up to the game. So that might be one area where they can kind of catch the Bengals while when they're still kind of working the kinks out after their magical run in 2021. So, but having said all that, I still kind of have a feeling that the Bengals are going to have their way with the Steelers. We'll see what happens, but that's kind of what that's what my gut is telling me, that it's going to be a long day for Pittsburgh. But obviously, if I had those kind of real powers, I would be using it for other things besides predicting football games. So when you look at the Steelers' 2022 season, it can go either way, I think, as far as, I think in terms of they could either, I think they can hang in there. They're either going to hang in there all the way till the end, like they have been doing the past few years, or this might be their first year since 2003 where they finished with a losing record. And when you think about it, you think about how tough professional sports really are. All NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, to have the kind of run that they've had, like nearly a 2-decade run where you don't have anything worse than a 500 record. That, I mean, you're really at a certain point, the odds have to be against you. So, they have a tough schedule, especially in the beginning. But really, if you look at their schedule up and down, there aren't too many cream puffs on their schedule. And they themselves have a lot of question marks. So, this would not shock me if this is one of those years where it's like a 6-win year. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying it would not shock me, simply because of the struggles that they've had and their schedule, and the fact that the AFC is just so loaded. The Bengals, they've had the Steelers number the last 3 meetings. But if you look at the AFC as a whole, I mean, you got the Chiefs, you got the Bills, who may be the best team in football, and the Chargers, the Raiders, the Ravens, the Titans are a good team. The Colts are a good team. Now, these are all good football teams. This is going to be a tough year in the AFC. So, this could be that year where it's like, all right, the Steelers might not they might be going for a top 10 draft pick. So we'll see what happens. But one thing I will say, and this the next thing I'm going to get into is the NFL's the kickoff classic that they had on Thursday night between the defending Super Bowl champion Rams and the Bills. And, the Bills, it was in LA, of course. That's what the NFL does every year. They open up their season on a Thursday night at the home of the defending Super Bowl champion, and the Bills dominated from start to finish, really. The Rams came back at the end of the first half and tied the game, but really, the final score was 31-10. It could have very easily been 41-10, 50-10. I mean, that's how dominant the Bills were. And, the Bills were really, I think, maybe the best team in the playoffs last year. You look at what they did to the Patriots in the wild card round. It just blew them out. The worst playoff defeat in Bill Belichick's career. And then, they had the Chiefs beat with 13 seconds left, and they let that game get away unbelievably. But I think the Bills may have been the best team in not just the AFC play, but all playoffs last year, and they just kind of let that game get away at the end in the divisional round. So they're hungry, and everybody's picking them to win. And if you look at the way they dominated the Rams in their place on Thursday night to open the year, I think there are a lot of folks out there who might be right when all is said and done. So, the Bills are going to be tough. And, for the Rams, it's yet another reminder that the NFL stands for not for long. They won the Super Bowl in their home stadium last year in February, knocking off obviously the Bengals. And then they returned to that place to start the 2022 campaign, and it's like it might as well have been on a different planet. That's how different they looked. I mean, Matthew Stafford struggled. The Rams defense struggled mightily. It was a bad way to open the year. I'm not saying that the Rams are done, because I think they're still really good. And they added Bobby Wagner in the offseason. They have Cooper Kupp, best receiver in the NFL. They have a darn good team, but it's just so hard to repeat and to stay on top. And the Rams got a reminder of that on Thursday night. There's always somebody nipping at your heels, and right now it looks like the Bills are that team that's hungry to finally get over the top and get to a Super Bowl and win one. So, that might be another. If you're looking for some more optimism for Sunday, the Bengals might come out flat, despite how magical their 2021 campaign was. But the only difference is the Steelers clearly are not the Bills. So even if they come out flat, they still might find a way to win that game. So we'll see. All right. Kathy Ford says of last night's games that the turnovers killed the game. Yeah, Matthew Stafford threw multiple interceptions. I mean, the Bills, they made some mistakes too. Mistakes that had they not made those mistakes, they probably would have won the game more thoroughly. I mean, they really physically dominated the Rams. And, Von Miller, who was with LA last year, he signed with the Bills. They signed him to a huge deal. And you're wondering, why are they spending this kind of money on this veteran player? But he made his presence known on Thursday. He had at least 2 sacks against Matthew Stafford, and it was just a thoroughly dominant performance by the Bills. And this is Jeremiah Yoder, and he asks rhetorically, I wonder what the rest of the NFC West thought of that Rams performance last night. That's a good point there, because that division's pretty good. The NFC West is pretty good. And the 49ers are expected to contend. The Cardinals are a really good team. Seattle is going to probably struggle this year because they traded away Russell Wilson, so they have to figure out their quarterback situation before they can figure anything else out. So, but it's definitely going to be a 3-team race, and right now the Rams got off to the worst start imaginable. So, what the rest of that division is thinking right now is, all right, LA, you had your fun last year, but we're gonna make life difficult for you this year. You might be the defending champions, but that it's got nothing to do with 2022. So, all right, my next topic, and this I kind of alluded to this earlier, and my next topic is a personal one, and that's how incredibly grateful and excited I am for this 2022 season to finally start. Real NFL football. I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to be honest. I am so over this off season. It felt like it was the longest off season ever. And when I say long, like, oh my gosh, I'm so starved for football. When's the off season going to be over? When's the season going to get here? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it was long in terms of having to stay engaged seemingly every moment of the day. Starting with all the draft talk in January, immediately after the Steelers were eliminated from the playoffs, all the way through March, and then it was on to the free agency, and then more draft talk after that. And then it went into everything, OTAs, the schedule reveal, mini camp, and then training camp. And it's just like, the NFL is masterful. It is genius when it comes to trying to overshadow the other sports leagues, its competitors, even in the off season. But this year, I think more than any year I can remember, it really did dominate the news, and it overshadowed anything that was going on with the NBA or the NHL. It overshadowed baseball, of course. It was incredible, and the league's been trying to do that for a number of years. It's been trying to sort of dominate the news cycle, even in the off season. But I don't remember it being like it was in 2022. And it seemed like it's getting more and more. The NFL is becoming more and more omnipresent with each passing year. And like you used to be able to take a break from NFL news for at least a few months until the training camp start. Now you can't do it. You can't do it anymore. It's like I can't even tell you right now what the standings are in Major League Baseball. Right now, as I'm talking, I can't remember who won the NBA Finals. I can't remember. Was it the Celtics? It might have been the Celtics, or no. It was the Warriors. There you go. See, it was the Warriors. The Stanley Cup. I don't know who won that thing. I don't know. I'm sure it was somebody. But that's my point. Is the NFL is so dominant now in terms of its news cycle that you can't pay attention to anything else anymore. And somebody like me who writes and does podcasts for the Steelers, or about the Steelers anyway, I mean, I have to stay engaged in order to have content, but it used to be I could get away with doing some outside the box kind of articles in the off season, writing about the past or whatever. You can't do it anymore. And people want that. They want that NFL news and the Steeler news all the time. And I think like a lot of like my theory about that is, I just think people's appetites have changed. Sports fans, their appetites changed. And I think fewer and fewer people want to invest emotionally or financially into sports where they have to be spectators 4 or 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. Like you have to be with baseball and of course the NBA and the NHL, their teams play 4 or 5 times a week. I just think that's, people don't want to put that much time into being sports fans anymore. I think they'd much rather debate things on social media like all throughout the year and then invest their emotions and their money into maybe 20, 25, 30 football games and then repeat that cycle the following year. Because I think that's where we're at. People are always complaining about the length of games. Well, if they're complaining about the length of an NFL game that's played once a week, they're certainly not gonna want to sit through 3 and 4 hour baseball games every night of the week, and NBA games and NHL games. So I think that's why. I don't know if there's anything that can be done to change that, as far as like these other sports kind of stealing the headlines. But it looks like the NFL is just going to continue to dominate the off season in the foreseeable future. I can't see anybody, any league doing enough or creating enough kind of star power to sort of take the spotlight away from the NFL. But that's enough complaining. Again, I'm glad to finally have some real football to talk about, some games to talk about, to react to write about, to do podcasts about. This is my time of year. The off season, I write continuously because I want to keep those muscles strong and taut, that when the actual season gets here, it'll be like second nature. And same thing I hope to be able to do with the podcast. Have some real tangible things to talk about, to react to. And I'm really looking forward to this Steelers season. It's so fascinating. And it's so exciting. I mean, it's the great unknown, believe it or not, is exciting for me right now. How they're gonna respond to all these challenges as a team. And I just can't wait for Sunday. And obviously I hope I'm wrong about how the game's going to turn out. And, I thought they were going to lose. I thought they were going to lose last year in week 1, and they surprised me, and I was pleasantly surprised. But I just can't wait for Sunday. I can't wait for NFL action. It's so great. So, all right. Before I take some questions, I have one more thing I want to talk about, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the tremendous honor the Steelers are going to give Franco Harris at the end of the 2022 season when they retire his number 32 jersey at halftime of the Steelers-Raiders game. I guess it's week 16. I mean, that's how it's not even the final game. It's week 16. And it's to commemorate the 50th year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception that occurred on December 23rd, 1972. Of course, Franco was the star of that unbelievable play, a play that we had never seen anything like it before or since. It was incredible. And to me, I think it's a deserving honor. I mean, you can say that about just about anybody, any of the Hall of Famers from those 70s teams. But if you think about it, Franco, Mean Joe Green, who had his number 75 retired in 2014, he was the first one since Ernie Stautner back in the 60s. But Joe Green has always been credited with changing the culture of the Steelers locker room, changing their mindsets and teaching them how to win and refusing to accept losing, holding his teammates accountable. So he changed the culture within the locker room over his first few years. And of course, he remained the leader of that team all throughout his career in Pittsburgh. But if Mean Joe did that, well, you can. I think it's accurate to say that Franco Harris changed the culture within the fan base, in the stands at Three River Stadium, because his arrival sort of ushered in the Steelers becoming winners. They had never really had much success. We all know the first 40 years. Then 1972 comes along. He's a first-round pick out of Penn State, and he's rushed for over 1,000 yards. He becomes an instant fan favorite, maybe the most popular player in the history of the franchise up to that point. I mean, I don't know, but certainly the way that the fans gravitated towards him, and there was a fan club created in his honor, Franco's Italian Army. Obviously, Franco's he's half African American and in part Italian. That's his heritage, and they named this fan club after him, and it was widely popular. Frank Sinatra, the legendary Frank Sinatra, became an honorary member of the Army. It was fantastic, and of course that spurred a lot of other fan clubs all throughout the rest of the 70s. Even Roy Girella had his own fan club, and he was an average kicker. So it was incredible what Franco helped to usher in, and he said so himself. That 1972 season, Pittsburgh won the old AFC Central 11-3, as I said. And as he said one time, it was like the entire city and the entire fan base had waited their whole lives for that one year, for that magical year. And, of course, he was, again, the hero of that Immaculate Reception, catching the deflected pass from Terry Bradshaw to Frenchie Fuqua, catching it mere inches off the ground, and of course, galloping into the end zone for an improbable touchdown. The first playoff win in franchise history, the 13-7 win over the Raiders in the divisional round. And, the city was just electric for an entire week after that. And of course, they lost the following week, but that was really the first truly great moment in franchise history. And it was like they turned the page from the same old Steelers of their first 40 years, and they became winners and eventually champions 2 years later. And Franco was the MVP of Super Bowl IX. He set a record that day against the Vikings, 158 rushing yards. So he was the hero of that play. It's the Immaculate Reception is considered the greatest play in NFL history, maybe even sport in the history of sports. That's how improbable and original that play was, and it holds up to this day. And of course, them winning 4 Super Bowls added to the lore of that play. If they don't win any Super Bowls, maybe people don't remember that play as fondly. But the fact of the matter is, it's the greatest play ever. And in addition to that, though, Franco was such a productive running back, and he was really the heart and soul of that team as far as an offensive identity. When Franco retired in '84, he was the second leading rusher in team history, but he was also he retired as the most prolific back in terms of carries. He had more carries than any running back in NFL history when he retired. And to me, that speaks to Chuck Noll's philosophy. He always said, before you can win a game, you have to learn not to lose it. And one of his philosophies was controlling the ball, controlling the clock, being physical, out hitting your opponent. And what better way to do that than to run the ball and to run it down your opponent's throat? And they did that on a consistent basis with Harris as their running back. And he was such a money running back in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs. He always came through for them. So to me, it was just a tremendous honor. And the question always gets asked, well, why not retire other players' numbers? And I'm sure that's going to happen eventually. I'd like to see it happen eventually, sooner rather than later, actually, because these guys aren't getting any younger. Terry Bradshaw just turned 74 last week. So these guys are getting up there in age. I'd like to see them have this honor bestowed upon them when they're still with us. And people say, well, if you start retiring all these numbers, you're going to run out of the numbers. Well, I don't think you are, because at least as it pertains to those Hall of Famers from the 70s, they don't give those numbers out anyway, other than Swan and Stallworth 82 or 88 and 82. And the way they've expanded the scope of jersey numbers for relative to various positions, you can very easily retire 82 and 88 and still have plenty of numbers for receivers and tight ends. So you can retire all those numbers and maybe a few more from more modern times and still have plenty of digits left over. So at least as it pertains to the Hall of Famers from the 70s, I would love to see them maybe every couple of years, maybe every year, retire, maybe do a couple at a time. Lambert and Ham, 58 and 59. Swan and Stallworth, 88 and 82. Obviously, Mike Webster's number 50. They don't give that number out. Retire that number. Maybe it's something his family could cherish and be proud of. Obviously he passed away in, was it 02 or 01? Don Nichelle is maybe somebody whose number you can retire. I can go on, all the players from that era. Maybe even some more modern guys like Rod Woodson. I always thought maybe he should have his number retired. Jerome Bettis. So, but those guys are down the road. But for the older heroes, I think it would be cool if this started the trend of them retiring their jersey. Because really, when you think about it, they've had so many celebrations from of those 70s teams, and they're all, they have 10 Hall of Famers now, and they've had so many reunions. The only thing left really is to retire jersey numbers, and why not? So, again, congratulations to Franco. It's a tremendous honor. He means so much to this organization. He's such a great ambassador. Everybody has I saw Franco story. I saw him a few years ago in Shadyside, walking down the street with an entourage. Like, oh my gosh, it's Franco. I can't believe it. So, to me, he's a perfect guy to honor in that regard. After Joe Green in 2014. So something to look forward to at the end of the 2022 campaign. So let's take some questions and comments and round out the show. And Michael O'Malley says, Tony, we will run out of numbers, but as I just said, like cornerbacks can wear anything from 1 to 49 now. Receivers have a wider range of numbers they can use. Running backs can wear number 80, can wear numbers in the 80s now. So I think defensive linemen and linebackers can wear single digits. So there's so many more numbers available for each position that I don't think they would run out of numbers, honestly. And again, that's something to worry about down the road. I'm just really right now focusing on these Hall of Famers from the 70s. You don't hand those numbers out anyway. Again, other than 82 and 88. And those numbers can also easily be retired. And you would still have plenty of numbers left over for current players. So I just want to see those guys all get honored with having their jerseys retired before they pass on. And Jeremiah Yoder says, talking about Franco Harris, what about Rocky Bleier? Rocky Bleier is a great story. Everybody knows about Rocky Bleier. He's a great story. He's another great ambassador. Yeah, he has a tremendous past, but let's be real. He doesn't deserve to have his number 20 retired. I'm sorry, but you can't. If you start retiring everybody's, even like the great stories, then you are gonna run out of numbers. I love Rocky Bleier. I watch Fighting Back multiple times a year, starring the late Robert Urich. Great movie, great made-for-TV movie, 1980. But let's face it, I'm talking about the truly immortal, elite, all-time greats. And unfortunately for Rocky, he does not fit into that category. But great story nonetheless. Tony Ringer says, became a Steelers fan in 1973 and saw the greats play in 58. And number 58, Jack Lambert, should be retired, along with number 52, Mike Webster. So, and he's so happy for Franco. I think everybody is. I think it's a great thing. It's a neat thing to have these kind of honors for people. Let's see what else we have as far as the questions. It's another one from Jeremiah. Welcome to the show, by the way. That's a new name. Joe Green was amazing, teaming up with Greenwood, White, Holmes, Lambert, Ham. Behind them with Blunt. Mel Blunt. There's another one I forgot about. Mel Blunt. Oh my gosh, maybe the best cornerback ever. Number 47 should be retired. And he listed. Yeah, it was a tremendous defense. Just tremendous defense in the 1970s. Arguably the greatest defense ever. All right. Jeremiah has asked, would you consider Terry Bradshaw? Of course I would. Yeah, Terry Bradshaw's number 12 should be retired. Of course. He's up there. He's included with all those guys. I mean, I could spend the whole show listing all those players. I mean, obviously Terry Bradshaw is one of the most important and pivotal players in franchise history. If he doesn't come of age in 1974, they probably don't win any Super Bowls. He always said the most important thing, you say what you want about me, but I came through in the big games. 74, 75, 78, 79. I was at my best, and he truly was. So, yeah, obviously Terry Bradshaw's number 12 should be retired, and I'm sure it will be someday. This is from the Cuda. The Cuda, who says, I went to every game at Three Rivers. It was a concrete jungle. Sometimes during the games, you were bouncing 6 inches off the ground. I remember watching those on TV when I was a kid, and you could see the stands sort of bouncing up and down. You can see it if you find certain highlights on YouTube. You can see that to this day. It was unbelievable how loud that place was. All right, what else we have here? See if we go back and find some older stuff. While I was rambling on, this one from George, and he says, I think Leal, Loudermilk, and Adams look pretty good. Yeah, I think that's, the starting D line led by Cam Hayward and Alu and Ogunjobi. Obviously, I think it's one of the better units in the NFL, but they're also pretty deep. I think they have some pretty good depth now with Loudermilk coming into a second year. They seem to be excited about him. Leal impressed a lot of folks at training camp and during the preseason. He showed some real promise. Adams came on big time last year when they picked him up. So, I think this line's pretty deep. So, I think as long as they maintain their health, which was a big problem for them, obviously last year without Tuitt and Alu, then you're going to have a nice rotation whenever you have to spell Hayward or the other guys. So, yeah, I think that might be their best unit, even better than the receivers. That defensive line, that's how good it is. And this one is from Travis Salin from YouTube, and he asks, the big unknown is if they are going to wait too long to draft first rounders to come behind Hayward and Alualu, much like they waited too long to draft first rounders for Pouncey and DeCastro. Well, I kind of, as far as the offensive line, I kind of broke that down on a recent show. Their line was such a strength for a number of years, and they did address the line early in the 2010s with a lot of first and second round picks, but they had other areas of the team they had to improve. Like, you can't do it all at once. So yes, right now their offensive line appears to be lacking in pedigree. And maybe if it doesn't work out this year, as far as the five guys that they have, and maybe some of the backups, they might have to start addressing it with first, second round picks. But once you spend so much, so many premium draft picks on one position, you have to start addressing other positions, which is what they did. It was just unfortunate that all those guys got old at once. That happens. That's why the NFL is the ultimate parity league. That's why the draft is set up the way it is. That's why they have a salary cap, because they want to make it as difficult as possible for teams to contend year in and year out. And usually every team has an area that they struggle in. And right now, Pittsburgh's bugaboo is the offensive line, and they have to find a way to figure that out. Hopefully, with guys like Dan Moore and Shooks and Kevin Dotson developing into players and dependable starters. We'll see. All right. Thank you for the comments, Travis. What else we have here? This one's from George, talking about Ernie Stautner. He was their greatest player for the longest time. I mean, he was somebody who excelled during the dark times, during the down years, and he was a tremendous player for them. Mike O'Malley asks thoughts on this O-line. If it will come together, can we run and pass this year? I mean, the Steelers. That's a great question, because they didn't show that in the preseason. That's for sure. All those guys struggled. Every single one of them, with the exception of maybe Mason Cole. The line struggled in one-on-one matchups. So it's going to probably be tough sledding for a while there, until they maybe come together as a unit and improve individually and collectively. We'll see what happens. But that could be the one thing that prevents them from winning 10 games and maybe sneaking into the playoffs, is that O-line. It's certainly something that hampered them the last couple of years, but at the same time, they have addressed it these last two off seasons. It's just they didn't address it with first and second round picks. Although James Daniels is a former second round pick, so he's the free agent they picked up, obviously. And this one is from Brian Brown, who asks, do you think the Bengals can keep TJ Watt off of Burrow? TJ was injured both Bengals games last year. That's a good point. Do I think they can keep him off of him? A healthy TJ Watt? No. Leal Collins against TJ Watt, I guess that would be the matchup, right? Because Collins is a right tackle, and TJ Watt, he plays on the strong side. I would put my money on TJ Watt in that battle. I'm pretty sure he's going to get some help from a tight end. So I think Watt, provided he gets help from his defensive mates, meaning Cam Hayward, who's a beast, and Ogunjobi, who has that beast-like quality about him when he's on. I do think TJ Watt can get after Burrow. To me, that's the biggest key as far as the Steelers win, is the defense, the front seven dominating the Bengals revamped line. So that's something to keep in mind and pay attention to. All right, we're getting up close to an hour, so I think it's time for me to call it a night. Don't forget to check out Behind the Curtain all week, the editorial side and the podcast side for the pregame stuff and the postgame stuff. And 48 hours from now, we're going to know that we're going to be breaking down Sunday's first game. Hopefully it's a good day for Pittsburgh. We'll see. But until I talk to you on Monday, you have a great weekend and you enjoy that first game. And I will talk to you on Monday. Go Steelers. Goodbye, everybody.